started. This is what I want to talk to you about today. The kid who changed the world. I want you to be those students. I want you to be a student that changes the world. I'm going to talk to you today about something that you're probably familiar with, but when I say the name, you won't know what it is. It's a law. Just like the law of gravity. Everybody familiar with the law of gravity, right? Gravity always, here on Earth, always works. Always, doesn't it? Pick something up, drop it, it falls. There's nothing you can do. It's a law. It always works. I have another law, and it always works. It's called the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. That's a mouthful. But you probably know it by this. It's called the butterfly effect. How many of you have ever heard of the butterfly effect? That's what we're going to talk about today, partly. I'm going to talk to you today about a scientist. Actually, he was a mathematician, and his name was Edward Lorenz. And back in 1960, Edward Lorenz got this idea that butterflies could change the weather. They need a volunteer. See, I should pick a boy, because we didn't get any representation except for one on student council, did we?
Come on!
You're going to be my butterfly. What's your name? I need somebody to be the world.
Me!
Yes, the world.
I need an 8th grader to be the world. Where's my student council guy? What's your name?
Gray.
What is it?
Gray Ridgeway.
Okay. You are the world. I need you to be big. Bigger. There you go. You're the world. I need you to stand right over here. Now imagine this. Edward Lorenz said this. He took the world and he took a butterfly. Absolutely. All right. Put your hand right here. So this one over here. Right there. All right. Now Edward Lorenz said this. That a butterfly. Let's move this. That a butterfly could be on one side of the world and flap its wings. Flap them! There you go! A butterfly could flap its wings. So this is what we're looking at right here. The world and a butterfly flapping its wings. Flap them! There you go! And as the butterfly flapped its wings, it displaced air molecules. Can you feel that? No. Flap them. There you go. What's happening? Lost a wing. Displaced air molecules. I can feel it. Can you feel them?
I feel like
And those air molecules could displace other air molecules. And those could displace other air molecules. And by the time it got to the other side of the world, that butterfly that's flapping its wings still can cause a hurricane.
That's a tornado.
It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe, isn't it? That a little tiny butterfly that's flapping its wings
The butterfly's about the same size as the Yeah.
can cause a hurricane on the other side of the world. But that is what Edward Lorenz said. Give me a hand for my world and my butterfly. Very good job. Everyone in the science community said, Edward Lorenz, you're crazy. It was the dumbest idea ever. But it stuck around. because it was interesting. In 1990, scientists realized that Edward Lorenz was correct. That the butterfly effect indeed did work, and it works every time. And guess what? It works on you. And it works every time. The law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions works on everything that moves. And you move. That's what I want to talk to you today about. The butterfly effect works on you, and it works every time. And I can prove it. I can prove that everything you do, every choice that you make, every action that you take or don't take, matters. And it matters to everyone. All the time. I'm going to tell you a story, and you may know some of these people, and you may not. The story that I'm going to tell you today has to do with choice, and it has to do with action. That's what I'm going to challenge you with today. Your choices and your actions. Now, if you think about the butterfly effect, you think about one thing affecting another, right? I'm going to show you a video. All of you have seen it. You haven't seen this video, but you know about it. How many of you have ever stacked dominoes? Of course you have. You've stacked them, and then you flick the first one, and away it goes, right?
Yeah.
This video isn't with dominoes, but it's with those tongue depressors. Popsicle sticks, whatever you want to call them. I don't know how they do this. But this is what you're going to see. You're going to see one stick cause chaos. And what I'm saying to you today is, you're that one stick. And in your classrooms, you can cause chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Where are my teachers? Tell me, is that not true? One student can cause chaos in your classroom.
Definitely not.
I'll wait for you to finish, and then I'll go on. Thank you. Take a look at this. One stick causes this. Let me see if I can get it to go. One stick. So they're showing it to you. That's a pretty good setup. That's a classroom. It's a big classroom. And there's lots of students in it. But one student decides to behave, and here's what happens.
Oh my God. What? How does that happen? Definitely not the seventh graders at all. Oh, definitely.
This is chaos forming in your classroom. There it goes. And kaboom!
The teacher can even agree the teacher. Yeah, the cups of the teacher.
We're going to take it backwards and clean it all up.
Yeah, neither am I.
There it goes.
Looks like a snake.
It's like a snake.
It's a snake sucking up stuff.
Look at that. You're going to give the sticks an applause? Okay, give the sticks an applause. That was incredible. I didn't do it. I told you before that this was going to be about choice and action, and today I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the choices that you make. The ones that you're making right now, the ones that you're going to make when you go back to your classroom, the choices and actions that you choose when you go home, and as you grow up. Because this is true, Merit Academy. Every choice that you make affects everyone, and it affects me. And I'll prove it. This is a book. How many of you like to read? Good for you. This is a book by Andy Andrews, and it's called The Kid Who Changed the World. And it's a story about some people, and I want to introduce you to those people. There was a kid, but of course he grew up. And his name was Norman Borlaug. Norman Borlaug was a scientist. How many of you are interested in science? Okay, let me get more specific. How many of you know what botany is? It's the study of plants, right? Botany is the study of plants. Norman Borlaug loved plants. And he grew up, and he discovered something called dwarf wheat. Dwarf wheat. Little tiny wheat. And it grows in areas that wheat can't grow. Really, really hot places, like the desert. You can't just plant something in the sand and have it grow. Norman Borlaug figured out how to grow wheat in the desert. And because of that, Norman Borlaug is credited with saving, are you ready? 2 billion people's lives.
Oh my God.
Because we all know what happens when you don't have food.
You died.
You die. And a lot of people were dying because they didn't have any food. Norman Borlaug figured out how to grow dwarf wheat and saved over 2 billion people's lives. That's a lot of people. Norman Borlaug's actions saved 2 billion people's lives. But what if I were to tell you, maybe it wasn't Norman Borlaug at all that saved 2 billion people's lives? What if it was a man by the name of Henry Wallace?
What is that?
Funny looking guy. Okay, I'm going to walk you through Henry Wallace and see what you know. How many of you know that there is a president of the United States? How many of you know that there is a vice president of the United States? Now it's going to get harder. Put your hands down. How many of you know that there used to be a president a long time ago named Franklin Roosevelt? Hey, look at you. Good for you. Put your hands down. Who is Franklin Roosevelt's vice president? Ah, there we go. He had 4 because he served for a long time. But one of his vice presidents,
Who's that guy?
Henry Wallace. So are you with me?
Yes.
Henry Wallace was the vice president of the United States. But before he was that, he was the Secretary of Agriculture. You don't have to know what that is. He took care of the food, the plants, and all the things that happen in the United States. And Henry Wallace decided that he wanted to start a science lab down in Mexico that studied, guess what? Dwarf wheat. And guess who he got to run it? Norman Borlaug. It was because of Henry Wallace's choice that Norman Borlaug went to a science lab and discovered dwarf wheat and saved 2 billion people's lives. So maybe it wasn't Norman Borlaug, maybe it was Henry Wallace. Unless, maybe it wasn't Henry Wallace at all. Maybe it was a man by the name of George Washington Carver. How many of you know who George Washington Carver is? Put your hands down. Thank you. What's he famous for?
Peanuts.
Excuse me, someone else is speaking over here.
Using peanuts as soil.
That's right. Peanuts, right? He did everything with peanuts and sweet potatoes. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. You probably use things every single day that you have no idea George Washington Carver discovered. Because of his choices, because of his actions, we have tons of things in our daily lives discovered and invented by George Washington Carver. But George Washington Carver went to a college called Iowa State. And while he was at that college, his, ready for the word, botany, remember? Botany professor told him, he said, George, you should go out and walk around during the weekends and see all the beautiful plants that we have around here. And George said, okay, I'll do that. And his professor said, you need to take my son with you, my 6-year-old son. And that's what George Washington Carver did. He took his professor's 6-year-old son and took him around and showed him plants and gave him a love of plants. That 6-year-old named Henry Wallace. George Washington Carver took a 6-year-old Henry Wallace and gave him a love of plants. He grew up to be the Secretary of Agriculture and hired Norman Borlaug, who created dwarf wheat, who saved 2 billion people's lives. Do you see the dominoes falling?
Yes.
So maybe it wasn't Norman Borlaug, and maybe it wasn't Henry Wallace that saved 2 billion people's lives. Maybe it was George Washington Carver.
What if it was the professor, though?
Unless.
The professor made the guy take it.
Unless. It wasn't them at all. What if it was a man named Moses? I know we're sitting here in the church, but it's not that Moses. Okay? What if it was a man named Moses from a place called Diamond, Missouri? I'm going to tell you a story. It's kind of a sad story. Moses was alive during slavery. And he was very much against slavery. He had a friend, him and his wife had a friend who was a slave, not his slave. And that woman had a small child. And a bunch of terrible people came and took his child and killed her.
Oh. Okay, that's.
But Moses' wife was so sad, she said, Moses, you have to get that child back. So he made a deal with those people who had took that small child. And so on a cold winter night, Moses took his only horse and walked it 5 miles to meet with these men. He gave him his horse, and they threw this burlap sack on the ground. Moses went to pick it up, and inside was that small child, almost frozen to death. Moses picked it up and he put it in his coat. And as he walked home those 5 miles, he promised to that small child that he would raise him as his own. And he would give him his name. That man from Diamond, Missouri named Moses Carver. And that small boy named George Washington, who would grow up to be George Washington Carver. So maybe it wasn't Norman Borlaug at all. Maybe it wasn't Henry Wallace. Maybe it wasn't George Washington Carver. Maybe it was Moses Carver who saved those 2 billion people's lives. Unless. You see where I'm going with this? We could keep going on and on and on. Everything you do matters. I can't say that enough. Every choice that you make, every action that you take. I want you to go back to the sticks. Remember the sticks that went flying? One single stick started this whole chaotic explosion. You've seen them, right? The dominoes. We've done that. You've done that before, right? You've set them up. Right? and then you knock them down, and they've gone on. My question to you is this. If we were to take all the dominoes that we have and line them up and make these cool signs with it and everything, and the one that we wanted was over here, and one person was in charge to hit that first domino, and away it went. And somebody decided in the middle of it, wait, something's wrong. How do you stop the dominoes?
You don't. You kick the domino.
Well, of course you can. How do you do it?
You move the dominoes.
At the end?
No, in the middle where it's at.
And what would I do in the middle? If I have my dominoes set up, and I don't want this one to knock over this one, which one do I take out?
The middle.
All I have to do to stop an entire chain of dominoes is take out one. I want you to remember today, this domino is your choice. You have the ability to stop the chaos. You have the ability to stop the chain with a choice that you made. Somebody raise their hand and tell me one thing about Merit Academy. Tell me something about Merit Academy. I am hard of hearing, so you have to speak loudly. You have values?
Valor.
Valor. Somebody. What is valor?
Valor is confidence.
Confidence. So there's a word that we have for Merit Academy. Confidence. Tell me something else about Merit Academy.
Respect.
Respect. Somebody else? Back in the back. Very loud.
Courage over fear.
Courage over fear. Somebody tell me what that means. What does courage over fear mean? Very loudly. Yeah?
Even though something seems really scary and really hard, if you know it's the right thing to do, you should do it.
Even though something seems very scary and very hard, if you know the right thing, you should do it? Is that correct? Is that what you said? That's interesting, isn't it? If you know the right thing, you should do it. Valor, courage. What else? Is there anything else from Merit Academy?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. So have I covered them? What have we got? What else? Goodness.
Family and friends.
Family and friends.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. My hope for you today is not that you've just memorized those. Not that you can just say them. If somebody said, what are the values of Merit Academy? Well, valor and courage and goodness, and I can name them all off. But I don't know what they mean. Or they don't apply in my life. Everything you do matters. But this word is what I want you to remember. It matters the way you act. Doesn't it? How many times have adults told you that? The way you act matters. Stop acting that way. Act better. Act different. What are you doing? Why are you acting that way? Right? It matters the way you act. Not only in your classroom, I hear some talking. Thank you. Not only the way that you act in class, right? The way that you act when you're eating lunch.
When you're at home.
When you're at home.
Playing video games.
When you're in public. When you're by yourself. Because this is true. Action changes things. I want to take you back to the butterfly. Right? A little tiny butterfly made a hurricane on the other side of the world. Just by flapping its wings. Little changes make big impacts. told you before, everything you do matters to everyone. And I'm going to tell you why. So we've got 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, right? 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. That means you're how old? 12, 13? Everybody 12 and 13? 11? Anybody 14? Anybody 15? Anybody 22?
I'm 22.
Okay.
I'm 22.
Hands down, please. Thank you. Thank you. Here's my point. 12, 13, 14, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years from now, you're going to be out of college maybe. And all of you are going to be the ones who are beginning to make decisions for all of us. You will be in charge of this world. I have 2 granddaughters, Sadie and Abby. You want to see them?
Yes.
Give me a second here.
Are they babies?
Let me just see if I can.
Yeah, are they babies? Or are they like
I want to look at pictures of babies.
Ready? There they are.
They're so cute.
Aren't they beautiful?
They're so cute.
That's Sadie. That's Abby. Sadie's in kindergarten. Abby just turned 2. I love these girls to death. Absolutely love them. And they love their papa. Why does everything you do matter? Because one day, the choices that you make, the actions that you take, are going to affect my granddaughters. And so what you do and the choices that you make very much affect me. And so I'm not counting on you. I'm expecting you to make good choices. 2 billion people's lives were saved by Norman Borlaug, or Henry Wallace, or George Washington Carver, or Moses Carver. Generations are unborn yet who are going to make impacts on the world, and you are going to make an impact on the world. Every choice that you make, every action that you take or don't take matters to everyone. Be this domino. Be the domino that stops the chaos. Think about your actions before you act on them. Think about your choices before you choose them. I guarantee you, your teachers will thank you. I guarantee you, your parents will thank you. I guarantee you, the world will thank you. I want you to be. I know it's a bad word, but I'm going to use it. It's not a bad word. Everybody looked up at me like, oh, here you go. I'm going to use a bad word. Not going to use a bad word. You're not kids. Okay, I understand that. But I want you to be the kid who changed the world. Change the world for you. Change the world for your friends. Change the world for me. But please, 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 change the world for my grandkids. Make those choices. Think about those actions. And change the world. Because everything you do, what?
Matters.
Matters to everyone.